For over 4,000 years, the Kaylor Dominion had ruled the known galaxy. Not controlled. Not influenced. From the burning cores of red giants to the frozen edges of dead systems, their banners hung in silent authority. 712 star systems fell under their command. Entire species rose and fell without ever knowing a time before Kaylor rule. Their fleets moved like shadows across the void, vast, silent, inevitable. Where they arrived, resistance lasted minutes. Where they stayed, obedience lasted forever. The Dominion did not negotiate. It did not compromise. And it did not forget. In all recorded history, the Kaylor had never lost a war. Not one. There were records of battles, of course. Small rebellions, isolated uprisings, desperate coalitions formed by younger species who believed, briefly, that unity could challenge inevitability. Those records all ended the same way: silence, followed by annexation. Over time, even rebellion became rare. Fear was more efficient. At the center of that fear stood High Admiral Kaylor Dominion. He was not the oldest commander in the Dominion, nor the most politically connected, but he was, by every measurable metric, the most effective. 48 campaigns. 48 victories. Entire civilizations erased or absorbed under his direction with a precision that bordered on surgical. Kaylor did not believe in chaos. He believed in outcomes. Tall, with pale metallic skin and eyes that reflected light like polished glass, he carried himself with the quiet stillness of someone who had never been forced to rush. His voice was measured. His decisions were immediate. His record was unquestioned. Among the Dominion's elite, he was spoken of with a kind of professional respect that rarely included emotion. Among its enemies, he was not spoken of at all. He stood now on the command deck of his flagship, the Oblivion Spear, watching the galaxy unfold beyond the reinforced viewport. Stars burned in absolute silence. To Kaylor, they were not symbols of wonder or mystery. They were coordinates. Resources. Strategic positions waiting to be classified and, if necessary, claimed. Behind him, the command deck operated with quiet efficiency. Officers moved between stations, their motions precise, their voices low. Data streams flowed across holographic displays, fleet formations, resource projections, territorial maps updated in real time. Everything was under control. Everything always was. Status, Kaylor said without turning. Fleet holding formation, Admiral. His operations officer replied immediately. All systems nominal. No hostile signatures detected within scanning range. Kaylor gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Of course there were none. There never were. The Dominion's presence alone was enough to empty entire regions of resistance. By the time a Kaylor fleet arrived, the outcome had already been decided. That was the true nature of power, not the ability to destroy, but the ability to make destruction unnecessary. A new set of coordinates appeared on the central display. A remote region. Sparse star density. No major trade routes. No registered civilizations of significance. Designation, outer null expanse. Kaylor studied it for a moment, his expression unchanged. Routine. Every empire, no matter how vast, required maintenance. Borders had to be defined. Empty space had to be claimed before it became someone else's opportunity. Even nothingness had strategic value if left unattended long enough. Still, something about the assignment lingered at the edge of attention. Not concern. Just irregularity. The request had come directly from the Dominion Council. Not unusual in itself, but the phrasing had been specific. Deliberate. Ensure full survey and confirmation. Not standard survey. Not initial scan. Confirmation. Kaylor dismissed the thought almost as soon as it formed. Politics, most likely. Someone on the council shifting assets, repositioning influence, playing games that had nothing to do with actual warfare. It happened often enough that he no longer found it worth analyzing. His role was not to question intent. His role was to execute. And execution, in every sense of the word, was something he had perfected. He turned slightly, finally looking away from the stars. "Prepare the fleet," he said calmly. We move for the outer null expanse within the hour. Yes, Admiral. Orders spread instantly across the command deck, then outward through the fleet, hundreds of ships adjusting course in perfect synchronization, engines beginning to hum with restrained power. From a distance, it would have looked like a constellation shifting. Purposeful. Controlled. Unstoppable. Kaylor returned his gaze to the void, watching as the first stars of their destination aligned along the navigation grid. Empty space. Unclaimed. Unimportant. At least, that was what the records said. And in 4,000 years of Dominion rule, the records had never been wrong. Not once. The journey to the outer null expanse took 6 standard days. Nothing happened. That, more than anything else, confirmed the Dominion's expectations. The region was exactly what the records had described: empty, cold, and strategically insignificant. The stars were older here, dimmer, their light stretched thin across distances that seemed to swallow even the most advanced sensor sweeps. No signals. No movement. No life. Just silence. The Kaylor fleet moved through it with mechanical precision. 120 warships, arranged in layered formation, their gravity drives bending space in smooth, controlled pulses. Each system they passed through was catalogued, mapped, and marked with Dominion beacons, small, indestructible devices that transmitted ownership across all known frequencies. Claimed. Forgotten. On the command deck of the Oblivion Spear, the atmosphere reflected the mission. Relaxed. Not careless, but close. Officers carried out their duties without urgency. Conversations, while still professional, had lost their edge. Even the ever-present tension that came with deep space operations had faded into something routine. Predictable. Another empty system logged, the navigation officer reported, her tone neutral but faintly bored. No anomalies detected. Proceed, Kaylor replied. He had spent the last several hours reviewing archived battle reports, not because he needed to, but because there was nothing else demanding his attention. Every engagement he studied ended the same way it always had. Efficiency. Dominance. Conclusion. He closed the final report and leaned back slightly in his command chair, eyes drifting toward the viewport. The stars here felt distant. Not physically, distance was relative, measurable, controllable. But something about the expanse made even light seem reluctant to exist. The darkness between stars was deeper, thicker, as if space itself had settled into a kind of stillness. It was not unsettling, just empty. Behind him, 2 junior officers were quietly engaged in a tactical simulation on a secondary console. Their voices were low, but the tone was unmistakable, competitive, mildly amused. "You're overcommitting your flank," one said. "And you're underestimating response time," the other replied. Kaylor did not interrupt. Let them play. Even simulations served a purpose. They sharpened instincts, maintained readiness. Though in truth, there had been little need for sharp instincts in the Dominion fleet for a very long time. Real war, had become theoretical. The Kaylor no longer fought equals. They managed outcomes. "Admiral," the sensor officer spoke, breaking the quiet rhythm of the deck. Long-range sweeps continuing. No contacts. No energy signatures. Kaylor gave a slight nod. As expected. Another system passed. Another beacon deployed. Hours turned into days with identical reports. The only variation came from minor stellar phenomena, radiation fluctuations, gravitational eddies, the occasional debris field drifting aimlessly through the void. All of it was logged, analyzed, and deemed irrelevant. By the 4th day, even the most disciplined officers had settled into the monotony. Maintenance crews ran diagnostics on already flawless systems. Weapons teams recalibrated targeting arrays that had not fired in months. Engineers conducted full inspections simply to have something to do. The fleet was operating at peak efficiency. With nothing to apply it to, Kaylor found himself returning more frequently to the viewport. It was not distraction. It was observation. There was a pattern to most regions of space, subtle but present. Trade routes left traces. Civilizations emitted signals. Even abandoned systems carried the echoes of past activity. The outer null expanse had none of that. It was not just empty. It was untouched. As if nothing had ever truly lived here. Or if it had left no trace behind. Next sector scan complete, the sensor officer reported again. No changes. Kaylor stood slowly from his chair, hands clasped behind his back as he stepped closer to the viewport. The darkness stretched endlessly ahead. Continue, he said. Yes, Admiral. The fleet adjusted course once more, engines flaring softly as they moved deeper into the expanse. Behind them, a trail of Dominion beacons marked their progress, a line of silent declarations cutting through the void. Ahead of them, nothing. No resistance. No warning. No indication that anything in this region had ever mattered. And for the first time since the mission began, Kaylor felt something he could not immediately categorize. Not concern. Not suspicion. Just a faint, almost imperceptible sense that the silence was not as empty as it appeared. He dismissed it. Space was vast. Patterns emerged where none existed. Even the most disciplined mind could assign meaning to nothing if left idle long enough. There was nothing here. There had never been anything here. The Dominion records were clear. And they had never been wrong. Not once. The first probe disappeared on the 7th day. No warning. No signal loss. No error. One moment it was transmitting a steady stream of data back to the Oblivion Sphere, stellar readings, gravitational mapping, empty coordinates, and the next moment, it simply stopped. The data feed cut cleanly. No distortion. No interference. Just absence. Probe E-17 has gone offline, the sensor officer reported, her tone still calm, though now carrying a slight edge of confusion. Attempting to re-establish link. Kaylor did not turn immediately. Cause? Unknown, she replied. Last transmission shows no anomalies. Systems were functioning within normal parameters. Signal disruption? Negative. Mechanical failure? No indication. Kaylor turned then, his gaze settling on the central display where the probe's last known position blinked steadily. A single point of light. Now silent. Send a replacement, he said. Yes, Admiral. The order was routine. Equipment failed. Even Dominion-grade technology was not immune to the slow erosion of time and space. A single probe loss in a region as quiet as this was not cause for concern. It was logged, categorized, dismissed. The second probe disappeared 12 minutes after reaching the same coordinates. This time, the sensor officer did not wait to be asked. Probe E-18 lost, she said quickly. Same position. Same pattern. Kaylor stepped closer to the display. Define, same pattern. Transmission ends instantly. No signal degradation. No environmental interference detected. She hesitated. Continue. It's as if the probe ceases to exist. Silence settled across the command deck. Not fear. Not yet. But attention had sharpened. Run a full scan of that sector, Kaylor ordered. Already in progress. The sensors expanded their sweep, wide-spectrum analysis, deep-field resonance mapping, subspace distortion checks. Every available system focused on the coordinates where two probes had vanished without explanation. The result came back within seconds. Nothing. No debris. No energy signature. No gravitational anomaly. Empty space. Launch 2 additional probes, Kaylor said. Different approach vectors. Staggered timing. Yes, Admiral. The probes deployed immediately, diverging paths calculated to intersect the anomaly zone from separate angles. Their feeds streamed live onto the main display. Visual data, telemetry, environmental scans. Everything normal. Until it wasn't. The first probe crossed the boundary. For a fraction of a second, its feed flickered, not with static, not with distortion, but with something that the system could not process fast enough to display clearly. Then it was gone. The second probe lasted 2 seconds longer. Just enough time for the sensors to register something new. A pattern. Not random. Not natural. Admiral, the sensor officer said, her voice now unmistakably tense. There's a detection, very faint. I'm isolating it now. On screen. The display shifted, zooming into the region of space where the probes had vanished. Layers of data overlaid the darkness. Frequency bands, motion vectors, energy readings. At first, it looked like noise. Then the system refined the signal. Lines appeared. Mass signatures. Large ones. Those are not asteroids, the navigation officer said quietly. No, Kaylor replied. They were shapes. Too structured. Too deliberate. Stationary. Range. Approximately 1 million kilometers across the cluster, the sensor officer answered. Multiple contacts. I'm still counting. How many? The pause. More than 20. The room was no longer relaxed. Every officer on the deck was now focused on the display. Why weren't they detected earlier? Kaylor asked. I don't know, she admitted. They're not emitting any measurable energy. No heat. No active systems. It's like they're dead. Dead objects did not erase probes. Enhance imaging, Kaylor ordered. The visual feed sharpened, resolving the distant shapes into clearer forms. Chips. There was no mistaking it now. Massive, irregular silhouettes drifting in perfect stillness. Their hulls were dark, scarred, covered in layers of dust and micrometeorite impacts that suggested extreme age. Some appeared broken. Sections missing. Armor peeled back like old wounds. They looked abandoned. Derelict. Forgotten. How long have they been here? One of the officers whispered. No one answered. Kaylor studied the image in silence. A graveyard of ships in a region that had been recorded as empty for centuries. Undetected. Unclaimed. Untouched. Any signs of power? He asked. None, the sensor officer replied. No active systems. No residual energy. They are completely inert. Kaylor's eyes narrowed slightly. Inert objects do not intercept and eliminate Dominion probes. No, Admiral. A moment passed. Then Kaylor made a decision. Prepare a manned scout vessel, he said. The words cut through the tension like a blade. Admiral, the operations officer began carefully, we still don't understand. Which is precisely why we will investigate, Kaylor interrupted, his tone calm, absolute. Remote observation has yielded insufficient data. He turned his gaze back to the display. The silent, broken ships hung in the darkness. Waiting. Equip the vessel with full sensor redundancy, he continued. Maintain constant communication. If there is any irregularity, they withdraw immediately. Yes, Admiral. Orders moved quickly now, urgency replacing the earlier monotony. For the first time since entering the outer null expanse, the Dominion fleet was no longer performing routine operations. It was reacting. And as the scout vessel detached from the formation, its engines igniting with a controlled burst of light, Kaylor felt that same faint sensation return. Stronger now. Not fear. Not yet. But something close enough that it no longer felt like nothing. Behind the scout ship, the fleet held position. Ahead of it, the dead ships waited in perfect silence. And this time, the silence did not feel empty at all. The scout vessel KSV Relentless entered the anomaly zone at 3:17 ship time. Its feed appeared instantly on every major display across the Oblivion sphere. 12 crew members. Elite. Handpicked. No one spoke as the ship crossed the invisible boundary where the probes had vanished. For several seconds, nothing happened. Entering scan perimeter, the scout captain reported, his voice steady, professional. All systems operational. No interference detected. The visual feed showed the derelict ships in greater detail now. They were enormous. Much larger than initial estimates. The nearest one stretched across the void like a broken continent. Its hull layered with centuries of damage, deep scars carved into metal that no longer reflected light properly. It should have been dead. It looked dead. Approaching closest structure, the captain continued. No signs of activity. No. He stopped. Not abruptly. Just stopped. Captain, the comms officer on the Oblivion sphere prompted. The pause. We're picking up something, he said slowly. What kind of signal? Kaylor asked. Another pause. Not sure. The feed flickered. Not static. Not distortion. Just a brief, unnatural skip, as if a fraction of time had been removed and replaced. "Repeat that," Kaylor said. "We're detecting." The captain's voice tightened slightly. "Multiple internal signatures. Very faint. Distributed throughout the structure. Define internal signatures. Movement." The command deck went completely silent. "That is not possible," the sensor officer said under her breath. The ship had been dead for centuries. "Maintain distance," Kaylor ordered immediately. "Do not approach further. Continue scanning." "Understood," the captain replied. The scout vessel slowed, thrusters adjusting to hold position roughly 500 kilometers from the nearest derelict. For a moment, everything stabilized again. Data streams flowed. Readings normalized. The illusion of control returned. Until the lights came on. It happened all at once. No buildup. No flicker. No gradual activation. Every visible surface of the massive ship ignited with light. Windows, sensor ports, weapon arrays, blazing white against the darkness like a star being born in an instant. The feed from the relentless auto-adjusted exposure, struggling to compensate. "What?" someone whispered on the command deck. The second ship lit up. Then the third. Then all of them. Across the entire field of derelicts, thousands of lights snapped into existence in perfect sequence, stretching across the void like a city waking from a 1,000-year sleep. "Power surge detected," the sensor officer shouted. "Massive energy output, reading off scale. Relentless, withdraw immediately." Kaylor ordered. No response. Relentless, respond. For a moment, nothing. Then the transmission came back. Broken. Fragmented. But clear enough. "There," the captain's voice strained now. "They're active. All of them." A second voice cut in. Panicked. "Something just accessed our systems." The feed glitched violently. Displays flickered. Data streams collapsed into unreadable noise. "Shields are down." "No, we didn't drop them. They're just gone." "Life support failing. What is?" Then silence. Complete. The feed went black. No explosion. No debris. No final signal. The Relentless had simply stopped. Exactly like the probes. But this time, they had heard it happen. No one on the command deck moved. Even breathing seemed too loud. "Re-establish contact," Kaylor said, his voice still controlled, but quieter now. "Attempting," the comms officer replied immediately. Nothing. Seconds passed. Then minutes. Every system on the Oblivion Sphere was focused on that empty point in space. Searching. Scanning. Waiting. 7 minutes later, a signal appeared. Automated. Distress beacon. Location. Kaylor's demanded. "Same coordinates, but drifting," the sensor officer replied. "The vessel is still intact. Barely. No active systems." "Send recovery team," Kaylor ordered instantly. 2 escort ships. Full defensive readiness. "Yes, Admiral." The escorts launched within seconds, accelerating toward the anomaly zone with controlled urgency. This time, no one spoke casually. No one relaxed. Every eye remained locked on the displays as the rescue vessels approached the silent graveyard. The derelict ships were still lit. Watching. The escorts reached the Relentless without incident. Docking procedures were executed manually. No resistance. No interference. But no response either. When they opened the airlock, the internal feed activated, and several officers on the command deck involuntarily leaned back. The ship was intact. Mostly. But the interior looked wrong. Panels were torn open, not exploded, not burned, but peeled back in long, precise lines, as if something had moved through the vessel with deliberate control. The metal itself looked disturbed, reshaped. "Scanning for life signs," the rescue officer reported. The pause. 1. Kaylor stepped forward. Location. Lower deck. Storage compartment. The rescue team moved quickly, boots echoing through silent corridors that should have been filled with 12 voices. They found her inside a supply locker, curled against the back wall. Alive. Barely. Bringing her out, the rescue officer said. Her eyes were open, unblinking. She did not react to the lights or the voices or the hands pulling her from the locker. She just stared at something that wasn't there. By the time they returned her to the Oblivion Sphere, the entire command deck was waiting. Kaylee stood in the medical bay as the team worked to stabilize her. It took 43 minutes before she spoke, and when she did, the room seemed to shrink around her words. "What did you see?" Kaylee asked. Her eyes shifted slowly toward him, focused with effort. "Ships," she whispered. "What kind of ships?" Her lips trembled. "Old." Kaylee leaned slightly closer. "Continue." "We thought they were dead," she said. "We got closer to scan them." Her breathing became uneven, and then the lights came on. No one interrupted. No one moved. "They didn't attack us," she continued, her voice barely holding together. "Not at first." Her eyes widened further. "They were looking at us." Kaylee's expression did not change. "In what way?" She swallowed. "Like we were something they hadn't seen in a long time." Silence. "A signal came through," she whispered. Old language, translation barely worked. "What did it say?" Her voice dropped even lower. "Unauthorized vessel detected." The pause. "Identify your species and allegiance." No one breathed. "We sent our codes," she continued. "Standard protocol." Her hands trembled weakly against the medical restraints. And then everything just stopped. Define stopped. She looked at him, and for the first time, there was something in her expression that even Kaylee's could not categorize. Not fear. Something worse. "They turned us off," she said. The words landed harder than any alarm. "Systems, life support people?" Her voice cracked. "I could hear them dying one by one." The medical monitors began to spike. "Easy," the doctor said softly. But she kept speaking. "I hid," she whispered. "In the locker. I activated the beacon." Her breathing became shallow. "They didn't come after me." Kaylee's eyes narrowed slightly. "Why not?" A long pause. Her lips moved one last time. "They were watching." The room felt colder. "Who was watching?" Kaylee asked. Her gaze drifted upward. Past him. Past everything. The people inside the ships. A faint, broken breath escaped her. They were smiling. The monitor flatlined. No one spoke. No one moved. And for the first time in his entire career, High Admiral Kaylor Varn did not immediately issue an order. The medical bay fell silent after the survivor's final words. Kaylor stared at the monitors. The young officer's pulse had stabilized, but her mind was fractured, a fragment of the horror she had witnessed. "Get me the full probe data," Kaylor ordered. "I want every reading, every sensor log, every video frame. Now." "Yes, Admiral," the officer responded, hurriedly tapping commands into the console. The room was quiet, save for the soft hum of the Oblivion Sphere's life systems. Every crew member knew the weight of what was coming. A full analysis began. Data downloaded. Signal readings parsed. The AI began cross-referencing language patterns with known extinct species. The results came back slowly, because what the AI found was unprecedented. "Admiral," the AI voice intoned, calm and neutral, "the data you requested includes multiple anomalies. The structure and energy signatures correspond to extinct sentient species known only in deep space archaeological records. Estimated age, 47,000 standard years. Classification, Varun Ancients." The words hung in the air. Kaylor froze. Varun Ancients. The stories. The legends. They were supposed to have vanished millennia ago, wiped out in the early expansion wars. Never to be seen again. "Explain," Kaylor demanded. "Analysis indicates these ships are not mere relics," the AI continued. "They are active. Systems are partially autonomous. Life sign readings suggest intelligent control. The species is not extinct." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. "Not extinct," Kaylor repeated, disbelief creeping into his voice. "Correct," the AI said. The species survived in isolated vessels. Deep space hibernation protocols maintained them. They evolved neural network integration with their ships. They are part of the ships now. Kaylor sank into a chair. The horror began to crystallize. They are alive, he whispered. But not in any way we understand. Not alive in a way we can fight or even communicate with. The survivors' whispered words came back. They were watching and smiling. Kaylor realized something. The smile wasn't human emotion. It was the subtle manifestation of a consciousness that had merged with cold, alien technology. An intelligence shaped across millennia, unconcerned with morality, with survival itself the only imperative. Prepare a briefing for the High Council, Kaylor ordered. But do not use the word Varun. Use code. The ancients. They cannot know we found them. Yes, Admiral. As the briefing began, the AI continued its analysis. It identified a terrifying pattern. Every probe sent into the anomaly zone had been absorbed into the Varun Ancients network. Their consciousness expanded each time a foreign signal was detected. They were not just guarding their territory, they were learning, watching, cataloging. Kaylor realized the magnitude of the threat. These weren't ships to be destroyed. These weren't creatures to be negotiated with. They were a civilization paused in time, awakened by curiosity, and utterly indifferent to humanity. A message arrived on the command console, encrypted, automatic, from the survivor herself. Her message, a fragmented warning, read, "Do not approach. Do not communicate. They do not forgive curiosity. They choose who lives and who is forgotten." Kaylor exhaled sharply. He looked at the crew. The terror was no longer abstract. It was immediate. It was real. And somewhere deep in space, beyond the void, the silent watchers waited. Their lights blinked like 1,000 eyes. Not hostile. Not friendly. Just aware. And awareness, Kaylor knew, was far more dangerous than rage. The crew left the medical bay that day in near silence. No one joked. No one laughed. Even the youngest cadets moved cautiously, aware of the scale of what they had stumbled upon. Kaylor returned to his office, reviewing logs, probe feeds, and recordings of the derelicts. One frame caught his eye, a faint glimmer on a distant hull, a reflection of something. It was subtle but unmistakable. A face. Or at least, the impression of one. Watching. Waiting. And somewhere in the ship, a new question formed in Kaylor's mind. If a species could survive this long, unseen, merging with its technology, then what else could be out there, waiting? And more importantly, were the Varun ancients alone? Or were they the first of something far larger, something humanity was not ready to comprehend? The revelation phase ends with the reader's mind fully exposed to existential dread. The story shifts from fear of the unknown to the horrifying implications of intelligence and survival far beyond human comprehension. If you want, I can continue immediately with Phase 6, the first attempted communication, where the tension escalates into the next critical plot point. Kaylor sat in the command chair, staring at the main viewport. The stars outside were calm, indifferent, but the dread inside the Oblivion Spear's hull was anything but. "All right," he said, voice low, "we need to understand them. Even a fragment of communication could save lives. Or doom us." The crew looked uneasy. No one wanted to touch the alien signal. The survivor's warning echoed. They choose who lives and who is forgotten. The AI began preparing a transmission. Not a standard hailing signal. This had to be precise, mathematical, devoid of any human emotion that could be misinterpreted. "Admiral," the AI said, "I recommend using a multi-layered quantum pulse. It will reach deep within their network without risking our ship systems. But there is no guarantee of response." Kaylor nodded. "Do it. Begin with a simple pattern. A probe of intent. Nothing aggressive. Nothing tempting." The crew held their breath as the first signal shot into the darkness. It traveled faster than conventional ships, a ripple of data designed to test comprehension. Minutes passed. Hours. Silence. Then, on the monitor, patterns began to emerge. Not words. Not sounds. Not images, but responses. Fractals, looping geometries, pulses in the signal matrix. The AI interpreted them as consciousness markers. They're aware, the AI said, and they are curious. Kaylor felt a shiver run down his spine. Curiosity, not hostility. That made them unpredictable, far more dangerous. Send a second, deeper transmission, Kaylor ordered. Introduce basic mathematical constructs. Let them know we understand logic. The crew complied. The pulses now carried prime sequences, Fibonacci patterns, universal constants. It was language without words. For a moment, hope flickered. Then the monitor flashed red. An alarm sounded. Energy spike in the signal, the AI warned. They are responding. The feedback is intense. A holographic display materialized above the console. It was overwhelming. A lattice of light, fractal and alive, expanding and contracting. Each node pulsed like a heartbeat, but not human. Something else. Kaylor stepped closer. Interpret. They are replicating our signal, the AI said, and amplifying it. They are integrating it. Integration. The word hit like a blow. They're learning. Every pulse we send, every pattern, they absorb it into themselves. This is not communication. This is evolution. The room went silent. Even the youngest cadet felt it. These beings were beyond negotiation, beyond diplomacy. Each attempt to understand them only fed their intelligence. Kaylor turned to the crew. Stop transmissions. Do not send anything else. Not until we understand the implications. Too late. The alien lattice expanded. The monitor flickered with what looked like recognition. Shapes resembling faces, hands, wings, but twisted, impossible. They're mirroring us, whispered one officer. Our shapes, our gestures, their consciousness is copying us. Kaylor clenched his fists. They're not hostile, but they are not neutral either. We've entered their domain, and they are aware of our nature. A low hum filled the ship, like the vibration of 1,000 engines, but the ship was still. The hum resonated in the bones, in the nerves. Every crew member felt it. They're testing us, the AI said, or testing the universe. Everything we are, everything we know, they can observe it instantly. Kaylor's mind raced. They couldn't fight them. They couldn't reason with them. The only option left, survive. He made a decision. Prepare contingency protocols. If they move toward our systems, we disengage immediately. Do not provoke them further. As the crew moved, the alien lattice pulsed one final time, an unmistakable message. Not a threat. Not an offer. But a warning. It was the first language of the Varun ancients, a warning older than humanity itself. Curiosity feeds us. Fear teaches us. Proceed, and be remembered. Kaylor exhaled. The first attempt at communication was over. The stakes were now clear. Any action, any signal, any thought could be absorbed. And the consequences were unknowable. Outside, the stars twinkled, but Kaylor knew the darkness held watchers. And the watchers were no longer silent. This phase establishes the existential stakes of contact, showing that even a simple attempt to understand the Varun ancients can empower them, turning curiosity into danger. I can continue with Phase 7, the first casualty and realization of danger, which ratchets up the tension and horror. The hum had not stopped. It lingered in the corridors of the Oblivion Sphere, vibrating in the hull, in the lights, even in the thoughts of the crew. Kaylor could feel it as he walked to the observation deck. Something had changed. Admiral, Lieutenant Sora called from the communications hub, "We have a problem." Kaylor turned sharply. "Explain." Sora's hands trembled as she pointed to the life support monitor. One crew member's vitals were spiking uncontrollably. Pulse rate, 300. Neural activity, erratic. Breathing, shallow. "Commander Riel?" Kaylor asked. Riel was already in the medical bay. Kaylor followed. The sight made his stomach knot. Riel's favorite engineer, Tovin, was convulsing on the med table, eyes wide and unseeing, muscles locked in spasm. What the hell happened? Kaylee's demanded. Dr. Harvin, the chief medic, shook his head. I don't know. It's not biological. His neural pathways, they're being rewritten. I can't stop it. Whatever it is, he's changing inside. Kaylee's felt a chill. The lattice. The alien signal. Every pulse they had sent, every pattern absorbed. Could it reach into human neural patterns? Is he, Kaylee's swallowed, conscious? Dr. Harvin's voice was low. Technically. But he's no longer. Tovin. Something else is operating his body. The mind is gone. The consciousness has adapted. Kaylee staggered back. Adapted? You mean assimilated? Yes, Harvin said, voice trembling. Not physically. Mentally. It's like the signal rewrote his thought processes. He's a vessel now. A scream echoed down the corridor. The hum intensified, almost as if responding to the fear. Kaylee's knew he had to act fast. He couldn't afford panic. Not now. Seal the med bay, he ordered. No one leaves. No one enters without authorization. Outside, the crew began whispering rumors, stories of other ships, long-lost fleets, entire colonies swallowed without a trace. Could the same fate befall them? Sora's voice broke the tension. Well, there's more. Kaylee's turned. What now? Secondary readings, she said, pointing to the main console. The lattice, it's expanding beyond the signal field. It's not just communication. It's exploration. Intrusion. It's probing our minds, even from a distance. Kaylee's clenched his jaw. How many more can it reach? Theoretically, Sora whispered, everyone on this ship. Possibly even beyond. The words hit like a hammer. Not just their crew. Not just their ship. The lattice could reach far into the void, through space, through thoughts, through the essence of life itself. Kaylee's felt the weight of command. Every decision they made now could cost lives. Not just one, not just a few, but everyone on the Oblivion Sphere. He turned to Harvin. Options? Harvin shook his head again. We can't fight it. We can't reason with it. The only hope is containment. Isolation. But even then... He trailed off. Kaylee's knew. The first casualty had already proven the truth. The Varun ancients didn't just observe. They assimilated. They learned. And they adapted faster than any human could hope to counter. The hum reached a crescendo. Lights flickered. Tovin's body twitched once, then went still. Dr. Harvin stepped back, shaking. He's gone. Mind, soul, everything. Replaced. Kaylee's closed his eyes. The reality was undeniable. They weren't facing aliens in the conventional sense. They were facing a force that could manipulate consciousness itself. He opened his eyes and addressed the bridge crew. From this moment on, treat every signal, every pulse, every thought as a threat. Do not provoke it. Do not communicate further. Survival is our only priority. Outside, the lattice pulsed again. Almost knowingly. Almost mockingly. Kaylee's felt it in his bones. The Varun ancients were no longer a distant mystery. They were here. And they had just claimed their first victory. This phase is crucial for ramping up horror and demonstrating stakes, showing that contact with the Varun ancients has irreversible consequences. It also sets up the crew's desperate struggle for survival. The corridors of the Oblivion Sphere were silent, except for the low hum that vibrated through the hull. The crew moved like ghosts, eyes wide, minds on edge. Everyone had felt it, the invisible touch of the lattice, probing, analyzing, testing. Kaylee stood on the bridge, staring at the starfield outside. The nearest jump point was light years away, but even that might not be enough. The lattice seemed omnipresent. Sora, Kaylee said, voice tight, status on propulsion? Sora hesitated. We can engage jump drive, Admiral. But the lattice, it interferes with neural synchronization. The pilots link with the drive. It's unstable. One wrong thought, one spike in fear, we could end up anywhere. Or nowhere. Kaylee's clenched his fists. Then we prepare contingency protocols. Dr. Harvin, how do we prevent another casualty like Tovin? Harvin shook his head, pacing. Containment fields only delay the effect. The lattice adapts faster than our shielding. Mental fortitude, isolation, it might help. But it's not guaranteed. Kaylee's turned to the rest of the crew. We either act or die here. Everyone on this bridge will maintain focus. No distractions. No fear. We follow procedure, and we follow orders. Survival depends on it. Riel stepped forward. Admiral, there's another option. We can sever the communications array. If we block all outgoing and incoming signals, maybe it can't reach us. Kaylee's jaw tightened. But that also cuts off external navigation and sensor input. We're blind out there. Better blind than dead, Riel muttered. The decision was made. Alarms blared as the communications array went offline. The lights flickered violently, almost in protest. The hum didn't stop. In fact, it seemed louder, angrier, as if the lattice resented the silence. Kaylee's felt the pressure of command like a physical weight. Every moment they delayed, more of their minds could be taken. Every glance at a crewmate reminded him of Tovin, gone, replaced, unrecognizable. Sora, prep jump sequence, Kaylee's ordered. Riel, maintain isolation protocols. Everyone else, lock down the ship. No unnecessary exposure. This is survival, nothing else. The bridge crew followed, moving with the precision of soldiers, hearts pounding. As the jump drive powered up, the ship vibrated violently. Instruments screamed, warning lights flashing red. The hum reached a deafening pitch. And then, in the middle of the bridge, Lieutenant Sora froze. Her eyes glazed, and her body stiffened. Kaylee shouted, Sora, report. No answer. Dr. Harvin ran forward, inserting a neural dampener into the console, trying to sever the lattice's influence. Sparks flew. The hum twisted into a high-pitched shriek, rattling the hull. Sora collapsed to the floor, unconscious, but alive. Kaylee's exhaled, hands trembling. We're cutting it close. Too close. Finally, the jump sequence completed. The Oblivion Spear surged forward, tearing through the fabric of space. Outside, stars stretched into blinding streaks. For a fleeting moment, the crew felt relief. The hum had dulled. But it didn't vanish. Kaylee's knew it. The lattice was patient. Learned. It waited. And eventually, it would strike again. He looked around at his crew, their faces pale, haunted. They had survived Phase 7, but at a cost. The first casualty had shown them what the Varun ancients were capable. Phase 8 was their first real attempt to fight back, but it was only temporary. The battle for survival had just begun. This phase builds tension by showing desperate tactical decisions, illustrating both human resilience and vulnerability to the alien force. It also sets the stage for the psychological and strategic escalation in the next phase. The Oblivion Spear was no longer just a battlefield in space. It had become a battlefield of the mind. The jump through hyperspace left the ship intact, but something inside the crew had shifted. Fear was no longer a reaction. It had become a contagion. Kaylee's moved through the corridors, checking on his officers. Every door creaked, every shadow seemed to move on its own. The hum of the lattice, though distant now, resonated in their skulls like a reminder. It had not been defeated. Sora, Kaylee's asked gently, finding her seated against a bulkhead, trembling. Her eyes darted around, never settling. I saw him, she whispered. Tovin, he was in the med bay, but he shouldn't have been. He wasn't Tovin. Kaylee's stomach tightened. The lattice. He didn't need to finish the sentence. The alien intelligence could mimic, manipulate, and infiltrate their minds. Elsewhere, Riel convened a small strategy group. We can't trust the crew, he said bluntly. After what happened, any one of them could be compromised. We need isolation protocols, security rotations, constant checks. Dr. Harvin disagreed. Isolation will break morale. Fear alone will destroy us faster than the lattice. Before a compromise could be reached, alarms blared. Security cameras detected movement in the lower decks, where no one should be. Kaylee sprinted to the source, Riel and Harvin at his heels. They found Lieutenant Marin standing over the engineering console, hands moving frantically. His eyes were wide and unseeing, murmuring in a language none of them recognized. "Marin!" Kaylor shouted. "Step away from the console." He didn't. Dr. Harvin activated a neural suppressant, but Marin convulsed violently, the lights flickering as sparks jumped from the console. Then, in a horrifying instant, he spoke in a voice that was not his own. "You cannot escape. You are nothing. The lattice is everything." Kaylor stepped back, drawing his sidearm, but even as he aimed, he realized the futility. The lattice had reached into their minds. It had already claimed Marin. Panic spread. Some crew tried to flee. Others froze, paralyzed by fear and doubt. Every glance at a comrade carried suspicion. Was that person still themselves, or a vessel for the lattice? Riel shouted, "Containment teams! Now!" But the teams hesitated. Commands were ignored. Fear had fractured obedience. The Oblivion Spear was teetering on the edge of chaos, not from an external enemy, but from within. Kaylor's mind raced. He remembered the stories of the Varun Empire's long-lost battles, fleets destroyed not by firepower, but by betrayal seated in their ranks. The lattice wasn't just attacking, they were weaponizing trust. Harvin pulled Kaylor aside. "If we don't act quickly, we'll lose more. I've been working on a counterfrequency, something that can disrupt the lattice's neural control temporarily." Kaylor nodded. "Do it. But we must isolate it first. We can't risk the entire crew falling at once." They sealed the affected areas, using heavy doors and reinforced shields. Harvin activated the device, a pulse of energy that made the ship shudder. The humming grew erratic, then quieted in certain areas. Marin collapsed, unconscious. The lattice's hold had weakened, but not ended. Kaylor looked at his crew, exhausted, haunted. "We survived the lattice's attack," he said. "But not without cost. Suspicion will linger. Fear will linger. And the lattice, it will learn from this. Every betrayal, every hesitation, every thought, it learns. And it will adapt." The bridge was silent. No one moved, no one spoke. Every face bore the same truth. The fight was far from over. The Oblivion Spear had survived Phase 9, but the war was only deepening. And somewhere, beyond the visible stars, the lattice waited. Patient, intelligent, relentless. This phase ratcheted up internal tension, showing how fear and paranoia can become as deadly as the external alien threat. It sets the stage for the final climax in Phase 10, where the crew faces the ultimate confrontation with the lattice. The Oblivion Spear drifted through the void, battered but alive. The crew had been tested to their limits. Fear, betrayal, and exhaustion had gnawed at them like unseen predators. And now, the final moment had arrived. The lattice had consolidated its strength, preparing for one last assault. Kaylor stood on the bridge, fists clenched, staring into the viewport at the dark mass ahead, a swirling nebula of psychic energy that pulsed with malevolent intent. It wasn't just a battlefield anymore. It was a test of their very souls. "We have one chance," Kaylor said, voice low but steady. "The counterfrequency isn't enough to destroy it. But if we can force the lattice to focus its energy in a single point, we might be able to sever its connection to our minds." Riel shook his head. "It will kill anyone near the node. Even us." Kaylor's jaw tightened. "Then we fight. Or we die anyway." The crew moved with grim determination. Those still untainted by the lattice synchronized their efforts. Sora, her eyes sharp now, guided the psychic sensors, pinpointing the lattice's nexus within the ship. Harvin readied the pulse generators. Time stretched as the lattice reacted, probing every mind on board. Visions of failure and loss surged through the crew's thoughts. Shadows of loved ones, memories twisted into horrors, whispered fears directly into their minds. Kaylor closed his eyes, forcing his own fear down, focusing only on the plan. "We anchor the node in the engineering core," he ordered. "Everyone else, shield your minds. Do not falter." The battle became a mental chess game. The lattice hurled illusions and temptations. Marin, still recovering, saw his family trapped in an endless void. Riel was assaulted by visions of comrades betraying him again. Even Kaylor faced the specter of his own death, his failure to protect the crew. But they persevered. They clung to reality, and to each other. With Harvin's pulse generators activated, the ship shook violently. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the lattice screamed, not in sound, but in a psychic resonance that rattled their skulls. The nexus in the engineering core began to destabilize. The lattice's form flickered, monstrous and intangible, writhing as if in pain. Kaylor and Sora focused the neural anchors, channeling the crew's collective will into a single point. "Hold it!" Kaylor yelled. "Now!" A surge of energy erupted, pure and blinding. The lattice convulsed, its grip on reality weakening. The illusions shattered. Marin collapsed, free of the alien influence. The crew, though battered and bloodied, stood firm. And then silence. The lattice had been severed. Its psychic mass dissipated into the void like smoke carried away by the wind. The ship trembled one last time, then stilled. The crew stared at each other, the weight of what had happened settling in. They had survived, but scars remained, both physical and mental. Trust had been tested, some lost forever. Kaylor finally spoke. "We won, but we are not the same." Sora nodded. "We've seen what lies beyond, and we faced it, together." Riel exhaled, voice hoarse. The Varun Empire wrote its history in conquests and fear. But perhaps we've written our own. Not with domination, but with survival, courage, and unity. In the aftermath, the Oblivion Spear limped toward a distant star system, lights flickering as repairs began. The crew moved silently through the corridors, rebuilding what had been broken, not just the ship, but themselves. Kaylor remained on the bridge, gazing into the endless black. Somewhere beyond, the universe waited, vast, indifferent, and full of unseen threats. But he had hope now. They had faced the unimaginable and endured. They had become something stronger, something more resilient. And as the stars stretched into the horizon, Kaylor allowed himself the smallest smile. The story of their survival would be told, not as a tale of fear, but as a testament to courage, unity, and the indomitable human spirit. The Oblivion Spear sailed on, a fragile yet unbroken sentinel in the galaxy, ready for whatever darkness came next.